Hey, vegan cyclist. Let's review these Powertap P1 pedals. I'm gonna tell you everything about my experience with them, compare them to stages, and kind of just go over a general 5-point list review. We're going to talk about installation and how easy and that is, and kind of compare that to others. Accuracy and consistency of the power readings, durability, the price, and my overview thoughts on the pedals. Okay, so I've had the Powertap P1 pedals pretty much since I've had my new Diamondback. I used to have the Stages, left side only crank arm power meter. I think it was like a Generation 2 power meter. I've had it for 3 years or so. Got really used to how that power was reading, and I had a lot of issues with that Stages. I mean, just in it actually working and it having issues with the battery. But when I got the Powertap pedals, I was super pumped. All right, so the first thing is installation. All right, you're gonna get a cool little box like this. My box has nothing in it, because I have everything on my bike and on my shoes. But if you were getting this brand new, you would get your pedals, and then you would also get 2 of their proprietary cleats. Now, out of the box, they come with a 3-degree float. They do have, I think, a 1-degree float that you can get from them, so you can get different floats on how the pedal or how the cleat kind of fits into the pedals. So you get 2 cleats, all the hardware that you need to put them into your shoes. You get the pedals and some washers and a little bit of literature, but that's it. Now, so it comes with 2 AAA batteries. So instead of on like the Stages and I think most other power meters, they have the really weird circular watch batteries, which for me I really like because I live in the mountains, and honestly those little round batteries are hard to find. I can get AAA batteries wherever. But you know, if my power meter died and I was in the middle of nowhere, but you had a little convenience store, dude, you could totally get a couple AAA batteries. So that's kind of neat. Drop in the batteries and you crank on the pedals. It's really as easy as it could possibly be. It couldn't be any easier. Once you've got the pedals on, you can calibrate and start hooking that up to your Garmin or whatever head unit you have. For me, the calibration was pretty simple. Now, I did have a huge issue right off the bat, and that was that the batteries that came in the box were not, I think they were dead. They weren't good. And in the little literature, it was saying that those batteries are like some of the best batteries, so I just figured, you know, they were great. Man, I was super frustrated, honestly. And when I called Powertap, the guys over there just dialed me in pretty good on some you know, diagnostics and troubleshooting. And then when I threw in some brand new, like nice lithium batteries, ever since then I've had 0 issues, and they've just been phenomenal. The other thing is that through the installation, if you have an iPhone, you're set. I don't. I am an Android guy. My wife has an iPhone, but their mobile app is all iOS. If you don't have an iPhone, it's a little bit difficult to interact with the pedals on that end of things. But again, I have an Android, so I just do all my calibration through the Garmin head unit. And so, yeah, calibrated it, and dude, you're set. You're set. You're good to go. It's that easy. So for installation, you could not give it anything less than a 5 out of 5, just because of the sheer how easy it is versus Stages or anyone else where you have to have special tools to install the product, right? You're gonna have to go to a bike shop to install your stuff. At least I would. All right, so let's talk about accuracy or consistency of the power. Now, I got really used to how Stages read the power, right? How I was progressing my data. I mean, I felt like Stages was pretty consistent. Maybe it wasn't super accurate, but it definitely was consistent. I would ride with my buddy Chaz, and he weighs 20 pounds lighter than I do. We would end up doing a climb. We'd start at the same time and finish at the same time. My stages and his cork would basically read the same power. It's like, well, obviously something's not right there. But it was something I was very comfortable with. So when I got the power pedals, the readings were different. It was what I felt like much more smooth, right? And it just makes sense because with the stages, you're only recording one side at a time. And so the amount of calculations that it's doing, or the amount of times that it's able to send power data to your Garmin, was less, right? So I felt like it was much smoother, that I was able to see, say, 305, 306, 307. Still you kind of have the little jumps like you're gonna have in power, but I felt like it was way more consistent than my stages. So it took a little getting used to how these pedals were reading to me. Now I went out and I had both the power pedals and the stages and recorded this power. Now it's a little bit difficult because I wasn't able to get some really accurate power graphs, which as you can see here, everything's pretty consistent, right? It is across the board, the stages read lower than the Powertap pedals. About, I think it was 10 watts over the whole ride. When I went through my little test ride, I did like 1 minute at 300, 1 minute at 350, 1 minute at 4, 1 minute at 450, right? To kind of see if there was any sort of scaling of power, right? So as you increase the power, would the difference between them get any different? And there really wasn't. It was pretty much across the board accurate. Now, the only thing is that when I do stand on the Powertap pedals, you can see right here, there is a little bit of a difference. And that's the only time that really I felt like it was a much bigger difference. Now, I don't know if that's more accurate or not. You know what I mean? It's just, there's definitely a difference between standing on the Powertap pedals and standing on the stages. What was weird though is that, so overall my Powertap pedals were reading while doing efforts anywhere between 10 to 20 watts higher than the stages. Now again, that's probably because it's more accurate, actually, like it's calculating more measurements of data because it has left and right pedals. The stages only has one side. So you could say that possibly my right leg or whatever is producing a little more power. And anyway, I definitely feel like it was much more accurate. But when I sprinted really hard, the stages read out a max watts of like 1500, like 1526. I was like, awesome. But the Powertap was 200 watts less than that, which is much more in line with what my max power really is. So that made me feel kind of good that that the Powertap pedals really felt super consistent all the way through the power profile. So I would say, if you here's how I envision it, right? With stages, you get sort of this type of action. With Powertap, you get this sort of action, right? So it's more of a smooth power profile across the whole thing, except for the standing part. And I've talked to Powertap. They said I could send the pedals back and see if that would change anything. But so out of accuracy and consistency, 4 out of 5. Just because that's, when I do stand on the pedals, it did seem to kind of exponentially scale away from what it probably should have. Anyway, 4 out of 5. All right, so let's talk about durability. Now, obviously I haven't had these very long, but I can tell you with my stages, I didn't have them very long and they were already starting to fall apart. The battery door on the stages is just notorious for having mega issues. With that being said, the pedals are sort of encountering more wear and tear, right? The pedals are coming in contact with the ground more than I would say your entire crank arm or your crank itself. So I guess like time will tell to see how they hold up, because that is probably the most important thing about your decision to buy these pedals, is if the durability on these pedals is awesome and they last for years and years, there's almost no reason why you wouldn't want to pick up these pedals over anything else. But it's sort of how I have to see how that's gonna play out. So I would say on my my star rating here would be 4 out of 5 on durability, only just because I've had literally no issues with them malfunctioning, and the stages I had issues all the time. And I know other people with Pioneers that have issues all the time. And so I'm just gonna base that off this like small window, but we'll see. So 4 out of 5 on durability. All right, so here's the kicker, right? Look, the pedals are amazingly easy to install. They give you some awesome metrics. Everything I think across the board is like, yes, awesome. But the price is steep. So the price on the Powertap pedals is about $1,200, and that's expensive. I mean, I don't care who you are, man. That's up there. In comparison, a cork is gonna run you about 800. A Stages runs you about 600. You know, the 4II or whatever, there's some other cheaper ones and they're getting down in the 400s. There is a reason why they're expensive, and it is because there is a lot going on in them, right? There is a lot of technology. And I think here's the main argument, is that with these pedals, I can buy this one set of pedals, and as long as they're holding up and the warranty from Powertap is good, I could essentially have these through my entire cycling career. Well, it doesn't matter what bike I'm on, right? As I'm getting new bikes, as my bike is falling apart around the pedals, I can continually have awesome power and consistent power. Because again, like I said, when I went from Stages to Powertap, dude, I kind of had to restructure my whole zones because the Powertap read higher. So it kind of messed up my training, honestly, quite a bit for like a month to just figure out what it is that I'm being told by my power meter, because I really want to know, like I'm really into those numbers. So if you had the same power meter from the day you started cycling, you know, 10 years down the road, man, the data that you'd be able to get from that and the way you could structure your plan and see your growth, because it would be so consistent, would be phenomenal, right? So if you were, I'm gonna buy my first power meter, and if you are thinking that you're going to put it on anything more than 2 bikes, it's worth it. It is an investment. It's expensive. But man, to just be able to spin an Allen wrench and take it off and put it on your time trial bike, or put it on your commuter, or, you know, whatever. I mean, you get a new road bike. The thing is with the crank arms, for me, is very difficult to change those because you have to have like a special tool, and dude, I'm just not a mechanic. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So look, the price, 3 out of 5, because it is expensive. But I think that if you were to really take into account everything that you'd be able to do with that, I don't know, man, you might end up having to buy 2 Stages power meters in the long run or more, especially if you wanted it on multiple bikes. So 3 out of 5. All right, so let's talk about the overview here, right? I love these pedals. One issue that I feel is that the cleats are their own proprietary cleat. So I can't put these cleats into my Shimano pedals, which is a bummer. And I only say that because it would be nice to have the Shimano pedals on my felt, and so I don't have to do anything. I could have just unclicked from my Diamondback and clicked into my felt and been on my way. The other thing is, if your cleat breaks out at a race, the chances of someone having the Powertap cleat, you know what I mean? It's not likely, and there's probably not a whole lot of bike shops that are going to have a Powertap cleat. So I think that that's probably the biggest issue for me is the cleat. You know, I mean, that's small, right? That's stupid and small. But man, if they were somehow able to work with like a standard Shimano cleat, bruh, that would be off the chains. The other thing is that people have talked about clearance because the body of the pedal is big. I've raced crits. I have not clipped my pedals. I mean, I pedal through the turns. It hasn't been an issue for me. I don't know if maybe with a smaller bike or something like that might be an issue, but for me, I've not had that issue at all. I can honestly say that I'm a huge fan of these pedals, and my experience with them hasn't been a breeze, right? So I think that that's like a pretty good testament to how awesome these pedals are. I highly recommend them. I know that price is steep, But it's an investment, right? And if you're looking at possibly never having to get another power meter again and just having one power meter to rule them all, you know, dude. And to leave you on this note, I would say that if you're looking for a power meter, man, if you're trying to get something for 300 bucks or 200 bucks, just don't, man. It's gonna be a waste of your money. Get a heart rate strap and focus on just that metric of training. You know, maybe as the technology gets cheaper, possibly they'll be able to get the price down in the future. But look, you want a power meter that's gonna be able to be accurate and consistent across the board, right? If I put power X today and I put power Y tomorrow, that they're gonna read the same things. And so I can gauge my progression, because a power meter is 100% the best training tool you could ever get. It is well worth the investment. No matter what power meter you go with, getting a power meter and training with it will absolutely revolutionize your program. As always, guys, Vegan Cyclist, yeah.